Welcome to the Passive Income Podcast. I am your host, Dividend Dave. Please be sure to join the Passive Income Posse by clicking that subscribe button below. And please welcome to today's episode. You know I'm on Twitter at Barry Milligan 8. I'm going to throw it over to you, Barry, to give yourself an introduction.
Good morning, at least here in California. For those of you who don't know me, I'm on Twitter. I'm pretty active. I'm retired. I'm a huge dividend investor. That's what I'm doing, 100% dividends and options, all about income for me. So that's what we'll go with today. And got any questions, let Dave know to let me know, and I can answer them for you. Nice dog in the
Awesome.
background, by the way. Mine will probably show up sometime.
That was going to be my first question. I was going to say, first, I've got to ask the most important question of the day. How is your dog?
Dog is great. He's out in the other room right now, but he'll probably make an appearance before we're done.
Nice, nice. Yeah, you and I both obviously love our dogs. We've both put several pictures of them on Twitter, and yeah, that's just sort of the fun part of Twitter as well, right?
That's right. And for me, that's what Twitter's about. It's about knowledge, but it's also about having fun. And
Yeah,
if I can't have fun, I don't want to play.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. No, it's a nice combination of some serious learning and learning from other people, but then yeah, have a little bit of fun as well, right?
that's right. I do want to put a disclaimer there, though, because you need to be careful who you listen to on Twitter. There is some great information out there and some great accounts, but there's a bunch of hucksters out there too, a bunch of so-called gurus that really don't know their ass from a hole in the ground.
Nice. Yeah, I agree 100%. So, uh, let's just get into some of the different sectors, some of the different companies in those sectors. Um, where I like to start, because it's pretty much my favorite sector, is REITs. I'm big into REITs. I really like the monthly dividends, and every single American guest I've had here on the Passive Income Podcast have all held Realty Income, ticker symbol O, and I'm guessing you do as well.
I do. I own several REITs, but O is I love the monthly income. Very predictable, very solid. Get some growth as well. So I don't think you can go wrong with O. I don't know how it is in Canada, but down here in the United States, I do not hold any REITs in my brokerage account. I hold them all in my tax advantaged account
Yeah.
because you don't get qualified dividends with the REIT. So I want to make sure I get that. So I only have it, in my qualified, in my accounts that have tax advantage is where I hold my REITs.
Yeah, similar. We have an investment vehicle called a TFSA, tax-free
Yeah.
savings account. It really should be called a tax-free investment account, but that's beside the point. And yeah, that's where I think, well, the majority, probably 98% of my holdings are right now is in the TFSA. And then we also have a retirement account. And yeah, so there's different tax advantages and tax benefits to one and the other. So, but yeah, TFSA for Canadians is primarily where you want to be for probably a majority of your income until you have it maxed out.
And Roth for the United States is
Yeah,
very similar type thing.
definitely. Yeah, I've learned that from talking to many other Americans here on the podcast. So, looks like you're enjoying your cup of coffee there.
Never can get enough coffee. One of my twin addictions: dividends and coffee.
Nice. Oh, so you own Starbucks then?
I don't. I like the stock, but I hate the coffee. I think it just doesn't taste good. But it's a good long term dividend stock, good
For sure.
growth. So I'm actually looking at adding it to my portfolio this year, even though I don't like its product.
We'll have to get you some Tim Hortons coffee.
There we go. I'll try anything. So I enjoy a good cup of coffee or 10 in the morning.
Nice. Or tin of coffee. Oh
And
wow.
it's a small cup too.
Nice. Just circling back around to REITs. You said you have quite a few in your portfolio. Any other companies you'd like to discuss within the REIT sector?
One of my favorites, and I've held it for a long time, is MPW. It's gotten a lot of negative press recently. There's a lot of shorts on it, but I watch it, and I've been a holder and still a holder. I really like it. Um, Iron Mountain is another one that I like a lot, and I've held it for a long time. It's a storage REIT in a way, and it's transitioning itself into a data processing data center REIT. Got, you know, great long-term benefits and nice steady growth and great income. So
Interesting. Interesting. Another sector I really enjoy or like to discuss. Don't really enjoy it recently, but the energy sector. Any thoughts on anything in the energy? Are you familiar with what happened with Algonquin Power this past week?
I was actually going to bring that one up. I was a few weeks ago, I came across the ticker in a search. I was getting, was looking at it, and I was very considering an investment in it. Glad I didn't pull the trigger because all of a sudden it's not as strong a company. Power companies are not something I'm much interested in. For a while in the last couple of years, I didn't like where they were. Now they're coming back into favor, in my opinion, at least in my favor. The yields are becoming better. The nice thing about power companies and utilities is they're in regulated industries. You know they're going to be there. And for the most part, they're not going to do what Algonquin did and cut their their
Right.
dividend by 40%. And for me, I really struggle with a company that cuts their dividend. It takes a long time for me to bring them back into my favor.
Yeah, it's quite a red flag when they cut and especially cut by that much.
Yeah.
Definitely,
I'm
right?
retired. I live on my income. I've got more than I need, but that's beside the point. Um, when they do that, to me, it's a slap in the face. And one of the things that I look at when I'm trying to determine if I want to buy into a company is management and their quality. And when they do something like that, a lot of times that's saying that the management's not as good as they should be.
Definitely.
You
Yeah, I've seen a lot of tweets this week since the Thursday morning announcement about how the management team needs to be replaced or
Yeah.
something needs to happen there to make
And,
just to make the entire management better better
yeah.
overall.
Yep. I mean, things happen to people, to companies, but having managed, as an executive, you've got to have your finger on the pulse of what's going on. And it's not good if you have to do something like that. But if you let your shareholders, your constituents know prior to it happening, you're better off than if you just come up and say, "Oh yeah, by the way, guys,"
Right.
you know,
I think the writing was on the wall with Algonquin. The majority of us knew it was coming, so it wasn't really a shock when it happened. And I look at Algonquin Power as still a long-term hold. Like, where is it gonna be in 10 years' time? Like, the company is still gonna exist in 10 years. So we might look back on this, January 2023 dividend cut as just a blip in that 10-year chart. But who knows, right?
well, you have to look at it if you still believe in the company. And I'm going to put this one with AT&T.
Yeah,
Okay, AT&T is one of my longest term holdings. Most of the time, if they cut my dividend substantially, or they don't raise it in case of AT&T, that's a flag for me. May not be a red one, may not be waving, but it's a flag, and I look at it.
yeah.
I still hold AT&T. I'm not buying, but I still hold it. So I look at it. Maybe this is a buying opportunity. Price comes down. If you like Algonquin, it hasn't changed. Still believe in it, then it's an opportunity to add to your position. Um,
Yeah, and I
I
tweeted that actually after the announcement. I'm like, "Okay, everyone is fearful of Algonquin right now. Is now the time to be greedy?" And,
yeah,
of course, you could imagine the mixed responses I got from that tweet, right?
but I think it was Warren Buffett who said, be greedy when others are fearful, and be
Yeah,
fearful when others
exactly.
are greedy. And that is so true. I mean, when I started my investing journey, I was a pure value, Warren Buffett, you know, type of investor, and you never at that magnitude, obviously, but finding that value and where you find it that's what it was about for me. And um, you would look at things that had a problem like that. Um, so Yeah, why not?
Yeah, you look at the problems and go, okay, well, what are they doing to solve the problems, and where are they going to be? Like I said, in 5 years or 10 years from now, will there be resolutions to the current today's problems, the existing problems right now? Are those problems going to be a thing of the past? Like no one will be talking about those problems in 5, 7, 10 years, right?
Right. But you have to evaluate it and say, okay, is management taking the steps necessary to make sure it doesn't happen again?
Yeah,
If you don't have confidence in management, then I'd look someplace else and put my money.
yeah,
If you say, okay, they did bad, not good, but they've admitted it, it's going to be stronger going forward. Excuse me. Then yeah, you want to look at it and buy it. Great opportunity.
yeah. And that was a lot of those responses to
Come
the
here.
tweets was just not. There is that the puppy. That was definitely a response to a lot of the tweets, or a lot of the responses to my tweet, just not zero confidence in the current management. So I guess we'll just see where that goes in the next several years.
Come here, bud.
What's his name?
This is Boone.
Boone. Nice.
He's a little
Awesome.
wild at the moment.
Cool. Cool. Yeah,
My
he's a
my
beautiful
daughter's
dog. I've
taking
seen
him
lots
for
of your pictures on Twitter. He's
Yep, my
he's
daughter's
great.
getting ready to take him for a walk, so he's a little amped
Hyper.
up at the moment.
Yeah. Let's dive into another sector, banking and financials. And you probably, even just from being on Twitter and following like myself and other Canadians, I'm sure you're well aware of how strong the Canadian banks are. And yeah, let's just jump into what are your thoughts on Canadian banks, American banks, anything else in the financials that you'd like to discuss?
Um, I don't follow Canadian banks that much. I do know they're pretty strong. I've been looking at TD
Yeah.
to make an investment, and I haven't pulled the trigger yet, but it's one I've been watching for some time. A couple others up there too, but banking sector in the United States right now is one that I'm pulling back from. I'm not, with us looking teetering on the brink of recession,
Yeah.
it's something that I'm really watching close because the banks are so heavily regulated and they've gotten in so much trouble in the past and they've got dividends and things like that it's a back burner industry for me right now.
Hmm.
Um, there are better places for my money, in my opinion. Again, but you look at it, if the price is right and you're getting value and you like it long term, there's nothing wrong with it. And
Yeah,
and
for sure.
solid banks are not going to go away. Bank America is one here, Chase, a couple of them. But like I said, the recession has me a little panicked about them right now. So I'm staying away, putting my money in other areas.
Yeah, that's understandable. And when you say they got in trouble in the past, I'm sure you're talking about 2008.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right? And the Canadian banks fared much better through 2008. They were just, I guess, in a better position. I mean, obviously, what happened in the US in 2008 still affects Canada. Um, the old saying goes, when the US sneezes, Canada catches a cold, because everything that happens there affects us, right? So,
Right. But it's you know some of the banks I think in the United States in 2008 were just caught up in the contagion
yeah,
that others had caused, and I don't like it when the government steps in and says you can't pay out more than, you can't do this. Um, I'm more of a free market guy, and the banks are a little bit more heavily regulated than I like, especially going into a recession.
understandable, understandable. I'm just going to throw this out for you, though. Canadian banks, I think it's Bank of Nova Scotia, has been paying a dividend since 1829.
That's older than I am.
Yeah, I'm older than both of us put together. And then I think the next one is Bank of Montreal has been paying a dividend since 1831.
Yeah,
So they're
that's
both coming up
amazing.
on 200-year anniversaries of paying dividends.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I may have to look at Nova Scotia. I went on vacation to Nova Scotia several years ago and just love that area. So maybe I
Oh
need to
yeah, it's a
invest
beautiful
in it.
province. I've been there myself. Yeah, I've been there a couple times actually. Yeah, it's great. So just to cap that off, all of the big 5 Canadian banks have been paying dividends for over 150 years. So you just kind of see the strength there of now, obviously, I highly doubt they've been giving dividend raises every single year for 150, 200 years, but yeah, it's just I've had a couple other conversations with people saying, okay, well, there's dividend aristocrats and dividend kings, but somebody that's paying a dividend for over 100 years, and somebody came up, I forget who it is. I'm gonna have to go back and look up who said it, but they said, yeah, we should call them dividend centurions. And I'm like, that's pretty good,
That
right?
is good. And having that length of dividend is important when I'm looking at a dividend stock to get into. That dividend
Yeah,
history is one of the things that I look at strongly. Dividend growth, though, is the other part of that.
for sure.
Having a dividend is great, but I'm looking for that raise every year because my cost of living is going up every year.
Yep.
So that's another part of what I look for. Um,
Yeah.
so that's why, like I said, that's why I've stayed away from U.S. banks. I may have to get a little bit more into the Canadian banks and look a little bit closer into them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, not financial advice, but most people say you can't go wrong with Canadian banks. So, yeah, it's tough to argue with, like you said, you're looking for those raises, even if they don't come every single year, at least if they come every other year or something, you just want to make sure that there's that growth in your dividend portfolio, right?
100%.
110%.
Okay.
Yeah. You mentioned AT&T. Let's talk a little bit more about the telecom industry or the sector, the telecoms. This one I find kind of similar between Canada and the US. We have 3 big ones up here in Canada called Bell Canada, TELUS, and Rogers, whereas in the US you have your big 3 like AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile. And I guess just what are your thoughts on the telecoms like AT&T compared to Verizon? And it's my understanding T-Mobile doesn't pay a dividend, so you probably have a lesser opinion of that one if you're solely into dividend investing.
I'm not a big fan of T-Mobile because they don't pay that dividend. I do own both Verizon, which I'm adding to, and AT&T, which I'm not adding to, but I still hold it.
Yeah,
Um, Long term, again, they're not going away. They are getting more competitive. There's some price pressures and stuff, but you you know, can't go wrong with the dividends they pay right now. So I'm a big believer in, like I said, Verizon. I don't know if I'll ever add to my AT&T position again. At one point in time, it was my largest position,
mhm,
but I have not, added to it since they quit raising the dividend a couple years ago. Um, but I've had
understandable.
it's no longer my biggest position. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, that's also understandable. Yeah, so I just look at the telecoms like, you know, we're all on our phones all day, every day on Twitter, or you know, everybody's on their phone, whether they're on Facebook or Instagram or texting or watching videos or who knows what, but everybody's on their phone all the time. And so I just look at those companies as like, okay, well, people are using their phones, so they're connected to a network. And in the US, they're connected probably to one of those big three, and same in Canada, they're connected to one of our big three. And obviously there's some smaller players in both countries, but it's really the big three in both, right? So
Correct.
and that's what I really look at. It's just the usage. Everybody's on their phone, 25 hours a day of screen time, it seems, right? So I just kind of think, yeah, they're probably all again, you'd have to, do your own due diligence and look into it. And like you said, you may not want to look at AT&T right now because of that. Hasn't been any dividend growth, but they're like you said, they're not going anywhere over time. They're probably still really solid investments. So I guess just take that all with a grain of salt.
100%. It really depends on what you're looking for as an investor. Do you want that growth? Do you need that growth? Do you want that 100, 200 years of stability? What is it that you're looking for? Um,
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are looking for both, right? The growth and the stability. And there are companies out there that will give you that. So I think that's just an interesting That's a very interesting sort of take on it, right?
Yeah, it is. There is no one way to invest. I mean, everybody's different. Go
Yeah.
find what works for you in your situation. For me, where I'm at in my stage of life, not working by choice, by the way,
Yeah.
um, you know, I'm all about the income. Literally, it's 100% of my portfolio. If I was your age, I'd have some growth in there. If I was like some of these 20s, somethings that are out there and lighting the world on fire, I would still have a dividend component to my portfolio because I like that.
Yeah.
But I would definitely have a very strong growth
For sure.
component to it. Um, there, if it works for you and it's meeting your goals, it's the right plan. But you got to have that plan.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely having a plan helps for sure. And you're right. People at different ages should probably have different strategies for those reasons, right? Like you
Yes.
said, when you're fully retired, like yourself, and you just want the cash flow, the income, the dividend income, just keep it coming, keep that coming every month, every quarter. Whereas somebody who is, yeah, like, you know, 25 years old and they're going to be working for another 25 or 30 years, then they're probably looking at some growth stocks as well. And they probably should be looking at quite a few dividend stocks as well to start building up that snowball effect of having that nice passive income really building over time.
And people, we talk about it on DivTwit all the time, but people really don't get what that is until you get it. They just don't see it because, well, a perfect example. I bought Home Depot many years ago. My yield on cost for my Home Depot is over 13%. You know,
Yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah.
Um, and I like Home Depot. I may add to that position at some point in time, but I haven't in a while. It's a great growth stock, but with a fantastic dividend, especially if you hold it long term, like I've been doing.
Yeah.
And it gives me a raise most years, so I'm happy camper with that one.
For sure. Yeah, I look at companies like Home Depot and Lowe's, and there's always going to be building going on. There's always going to be construction. I once heard a saying that there's always somebody somewhere that wants something built. So, you know, you have to buy those supplies somewhere, and Home Depot and Lowe's are the go-to places to get those materials, right?
In going back to my past investing life, when I was looking for value and everything else, one of the things one of my mentors, my investing mentors, taught me is, when there's a big hurricane, when there's a flood, when anything else, everybody's going to head straight to Home Depot and Lowe's to
To
buy
buy
their
new
supplies, to
windows, to
put their
buy new
fence back
doors.
up, to redo their house, everything else. So it's a buying opportunity. It's not something that you should shy away from. I mean, that's when you know, be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful. It's the same thing as you
Yeah,
talked about.
exactly, right? Yeah, there's always going to be a need for 2x4s, 2x6s, lumber, drywall, all the building materials. So yeah, Home Depot and Lowe's both look like really good companies. Again, for anyone listening, do your own research, do your own due diligence, and figure out what works best for you.
Good disclaimer. I couldn't agree more because again, on DivTwit, I think I'm going to call them young investors, but that's not age. That's young and investing age
Right.
that are just looking for an idea and then they jump on it. They don't do the due diligence. And then when something goes wrong, an Algonquin power type of situation, they want to blame you or blame me or blame whoever gave them that idea. Um, you got to make it yours. It doesn't matter where you get the idea from, whether it's your bartender, your barber, your Uncle
Yeah.
Frank. It doesn't matter. Until you make the idea yours by doing your own due diligence, don't buy it.
Yeah.
If you don't understand it, don't buy it. You know, I don't invest in NFTs. I don't invest in crypto. I'm not saying that they're bad investments. I'm saying I don't understand them. I haven't done my due diligence on them.
Right.
I may at some point in time, I may not, but until I do, I'm staying out of them.
Yeah, no, that's very understandable and very wise of you. Very wise to not jump into something that you don't know enough about, right?
And there's way too many people on Twitter and YouTube and everything else that are gurus that say, buy this, do this, use this strategy.
Yeah.
It's got to work for you.
Yeah, I
You
agree.
know,
Again, 110% agreement on that one. Um, Moving right along into another sector that I really, really like to talk about is consumer staples, and consumer discretionary falls into that a little bit as well. And obviously, like for me, in the consumer staples, two of the best U.S. companies. Actually, I'm going to name the four best that I think: Walmart, Costco, Coca Cola, Pepsi. Like, those companies are just solid. Costco and Walmart, they're just packed all the time, uh, and people are buying Coke and Pepsi all the time. So, and just long term, they've been around forever. And yeah, just I guess, what are your thoughts on consumer staples, consumer discretionary, and in particular the four companies I mentioned?
four companies you mentioned, I love them. I own
Yeah,
three of the four. I don't own Coke right now. I like Coke. I just like Pepsi a little bit better because of its snack food division.
yeah,
Um, you walk that snack food aisle in the grocery store, and Pepsi owns half of
the
that aisle.
majority of the aisle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you can't go wrong there. Love Walmart as well. Costco is just a giant. I mean, it's just an awesome place. I mean, Div Twitter that makes fun of the Costco hot dogs all the time, but my wife and I prefer to shop at Costco as opposed to Sam's. We got a Sam's in town here. We have to drive to go to Costco, and we prefer to drive an hour and go to the Costco. We like the products better. I just think all four of those companies are really well positioned going
yeah.
forward. They're not going to get hurt too bad in a recession because people have got to buy their food. They got to buy their discretionary stuff. You know, um, you look at what they buy in a recession and what they don't. They're going to buy their soft drinks. They're going to buy their chips, and where are they going to get them? At Costco and Walmart.
For the most part, yeah.
So, but the other things that they buy is one of my favorites. It's a sin stock, and that's Mo. That's the good old cigarette stock symbol,
Right.
ticker symbol MO. Um,
Is that
Great
Marlboro?
dividend. No, yes. I'm sorry. Um, and just an awesome company. Shitty product. Excuse my language.
Yeah,
I'm not a smoker, but you talk about a product people will buy. Recession, good times, bad time. They're going to buy their cigarettes.
yeah.
And the dividend and the dividend growth in that is just um, it's phenomenal. Um, it took me a long time before I would because I'm an avid non-smoker. Um, my parents smoked, and I used to take my dad's cigarettes when I got hold of a package and crush them, and that's the way I am. But I separate the product from the company. Um, it actually has one of the strongest management teams out there, in my opinion. Good dividend history, good growth history on the dividend. I really like that one as well. It's not for everybody. If it's
No,
not, don't
definitely
buy
not.
it. You know,
Interesting, interesting. Well, let's stick with the sin stocks then. I own a few marijuana stocks and ETFs, so that would definitely kind of fall into that similar category of a sin stock. But let's talk about booze. Any alcohol stocks that you like in the sin sector? I'm going to start calling it, I guess.
um, I really haven't played much in the alcohol sector. I haven't looked at them. I really don't have anything against them, but it's just not something that's been on my radar. The problem with dividend stocks is there are so many great ones out there,
Yeah,
you have to choose and you have to pick. And so I'm not trying to say that there's no good ones out there in that sector. It's just not something I've dabbled into. Um, casinos, casino
Yeah.
REITs are one that I've looked at. My background, I don't know if I was a casino executive, is where I came from.
Oh,
So the casino REITs are some pretty interesting REITs right now. They're in that
yeah.
sin sector. Um, but alcohol is something I'm not that familiar with. Can't talk about very well.
Interesting. Just yesterday, I was having a conversation with uh, Dividend Seeker here, and he was mentioning a REIT that owned pretty well the entire Las Vegas Strip, and I'm like, that sounds like a very interesting REIT because
Yeah,
how do you go wrong with owning MGM Grand and Caesar's Palace and probably Bellagio in New York, and who knows what else? But like, I was like, that's an impressive list of hotels that they have in that REIT, right?
it really is, and it's a very nice REIT. Um, if you're an into a REIT investor and you don't mind the sin sector, it's one to look into. Again, some people don't like gambling and so they shy away from it. If that's what your plan calls for, there's nothing wrong with that. If your
That's right.
plan doesn't, you know, then it's something you might want to look into.
For sure, for sure. Um, Another interesting sector that I always bring up with Americans because obviously it's 100 and it's polar opposites between Canada and the US is the healthcare sector. And so I guess what are your thoughts on healthcare investing in the US and as an American?
Um, back when we got Obamacare, prior to that, I was one of the people who was saying we need a new system. Our system is broken.
Right.
We got Obamacare, and now I'm going to say we need a new system. Our system is broken. They fixed some things, they broke other things,
Right.
but longer term, I love the sector. Um, you can't go wrong. I mean, one of my biggest stock holdings right now is AbbVie.
Yep.
Um, I like this company that it spun out of, Abbott Labs as well, Johnson and Johnson. Johnson and Johnson's interesting right now because they're getting ready to spin off their consumer brands,
Yes.
and so I'm not buying. I still hold some Johnson and Johnson. I'm not planning on getting rid of it. I want to see what's going to actually happen once that spinoff occurs. Um, but I've held Johnson and Johnson. It's one of my longest held positions.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, actually yesterday Dividend Seeker and I were talking about that split and how there will be or should be a stock split. So people that hold the J&J will end up with some of both companies, the consumer side and the like pharmaceutical side.
correct. Um, and again, I'm an income, and so if they split them and they both pay decent dividends, I'll hold them both
For sure,
until
right?
I see if they, if one goes, because the reason they're making the split is because they want, faster growth in the medical, side of it. And if they concentrate on that growth and at the cost of dividend, then I may have to look at doing something different. Um, hard to say. And when you take the cash cow consumer products that they're, going to spin off, I'm going to miss those as part of J&J.
Yeah,
You walk down
understandable.
an aisle in the grocery store and it's all J&J,
For sure, right?
and it won't be anymore. So like I said, I've got some mixed feelings about that one, but overall the sector is just a dynamite sector. I mean, COVID has made some, you know, big strides in that area as well for companies, you know, um, hard to go wrong with that, with the aging population in the United States and everything else. Canada, I'm not going to touch you guys' healthcare system.
Yeah, so I've mentioned this on many other podcasts when I'm talking with Americans. The way I play the healthcare sector is actually I just invest in REITs that own the buildings
There you
that
go.
house the like medical clinics and doctors' offices and
Yep.
dentist offices and whatever else. And yeah, that's played out well for me. I have one called Northwest Healthcare that owns several properties. I have another one called EXE, and EXE is more into the like the long-term care and retirement homes. So again, it's like same idea, the aging population, those things are needed. But yeah, basically you need the buildings to house these medical or healthcare needs. So that's just the way I play it in Canada because for me, again, going back to the beginning, I love my REITs and my monthly dividends. And to me, it just makes sense to do it that way. Whereas, yeah, we don't really have the healthcare companies here, um, or even like the insurance. Well, we do have insurance companies, obviously, that we can invest in, but not like the healthcare specific ones you may have in the U.S. Right? Moving
100%.
moving on to another sector for a couple of old guys. Sorry for calling you an old guy, but we're not getting any younger, right?
I am. I wear my age with pride.
Yeah, me too,
So
right? So yeah, a couple old guys talking about technology. So what are your thoughts on technology? Apple, Microsoft, uh, Facebook, Amazon, Google. I always throw Tesla into the technology sector as well. What are your thoughts on the technology sector and any of the companies I just mentioned?
again, if I'm younger, technology is one of the areas that I'm going to concentrate on big.
Right.
Um, you look at ARC funds and Kathy Wood. I mean, she made that fund with Tesla. I mean, you look back at where she made most of her money, and it's with Tesla. You look at what she's trying to do right now; it's with Tesla. Um, she realizes that she's a smart lady. She did great early on. It's she's written it down. Now she's trying to write it back up, adding a lot. I'm not a big fan of Tesla right now. Um, because I think Musk is too tied up with Twitter and distracted, and that's not helping.
Yeah.
There's a huge amount of competition coming in there, and although they're still the market leader with both the technology they've got and everything else, you look at the Ford Mustang and the Ford pickup, and Ram just came up with a really interesting looking new pickup, and all the traditional companies coming on. I mean, the competition for the car sector in the next 5 years is going to be massive.
Yeah, fierce. Like
And,
you said,
and
like you mentioned, like, you've got your Ford, GM, Chrysler, Dodge that are, those established 100-plus-year-old car companies that are gonna be in there, but then there's also, like, NIO and Rivian and more EV-specific companies, and, yeah, so I agree the competition for electric vehicles over the next 5 to 10 years is gonna become extremely, extremely fierce.
yep. Um, Going the other direction, I'm a big fan long term of Microsoft. I like where they're taking it. Um, they're doing good. I like IBM, a name that's not really talked about much. Great dividend stock, and they've come out of the ashes.
Yeah,
Um, I'm not a fan of what Meta's doing and where they're at. Facebook, I don't get Web3. Um, there's been read a couple of articles recently that said, Web3 is not revolutionary. It's not going to do anything but AI, and stick with the AI in that way. That's where the
right.
next big moves are going to be coming from. Um, and Meta's got so much money tied up into it. And every time that Zuckerberg posts himself in one of those things and makes himself look like a 1990 pixelized everything else, he just shoots himself in the foot again. I don't know who shoots themselves in the foot more, Musk or Zuckerberg, but they're both pretty good at it right now.
Oh, that's a great quote. I don't know who shoots himself in the foot more between those 2 either.
Um,
Let's add
but
in, Jeff Bezos in Amazon. I don't think he's doing much to shoot himself in the foot. Amazon seems to be steady as she goes. Everybody's got an Amazon package showing up on their doorstep every other day, so
Amazon's a great company. I think its growth is going to slow down just because it can't continue to grow. I think Apple's got the same problem. Great company, great management, but you can't just keep doubling and doubling and doubling. I mean,
right.
one of my investing mentors told me, he said, trees don't grow to the moon. They top out,
Yeah, that's
and
another
it's
great
so
saying.
true. And so, I love those companies, but at some point in time, that growth has got to slow, and I think you're looking at it. Um, other companies in technology. What, a lot of the pure tech plays don't pay dividends, so I don't pay that much attention to them.
Right.
But I like Apple. It's got a small dividend. Like Microsoft's got a small dividend, but I get a little bit of growth out of those two as well. Um, you
So
know,
so when you mentioned Apple, like it can't keep doubling and doubling, and this is what I've thought now for a couple of years about iPhones. I just think of iPhones, and all I can do is remember Blackberries because, like 15 years ago, everybody had a Blackberry, and 15 years later, nobody has a BlackBerry. So at some point in time, there's going to be something new, better, exciting comes along, and all of a sudden that iPhone, market share is going to. I'm not going to say they're going to go the way of the BlackBerry, but something will happen. And kind of to your point of the tree's not growing to the moon, and you can't double. You can't double every time or every year, every 5 years. You're just not going to keep doubling. So I guess kind of what are your thoughts on my idea of like, you know, that what we've seen historically with the BlackBerry and where is iPhone, what's going to happen with iPhone? I guess, what do you think?
well, if you look at just a cell phone in general, not just the iPhone, cell phone in general, the they have to keep finding new customers, and there aren't that many new customers out there. You got the replacement cycle, but the replacement is not really growth. It's just keeping it there. You need new customers, so you either have to grab some from the other side, Samsung, Google, or you have to find new customers. Unless we go to Mars and find a bunch of Martians out there that they can start selling cell phones to, there's not a lot of growth
No.
out there. I mean, some third world countries, everything else, but there it's the growth there is not really there, in my opinion. And you look at it, I think that's why companies like Apple are going more to the service side and away from the hardware side, because they still want that hardware. Because once they get you locked into Apple, then you're locked into Apple.
Right.
But then they want to sell you all those services on top of it, because the hardware growth is slowing. The
Yeah.
services growth is where they're trying to make it up.
And that's a great, I guess, kind of segue to my point about Microsoft, where you now see, Microsoft having this subscription service where yearly you buy your access to Microsoft Excel and Word and the whole Office suite, I think they call it, or something like that. And so yeah, that's kind of exactly the route Microsoft has taken.
It is, but Microsoft's also expanding a lot into AI
Right.
and a lot into database, and going away from their traditional, Windows and Office products. They still got them. That's their iPhone, you know,
Yeah.
but they're looking at their services and what they can do and how they can grow too. Um, and they've done a great job. I go back and I look, when they were founded, they did a great job, and they, retired the CEO and brought in a CEO who really missed a lot of things. Malmer did not impress me as their CEO very much. Um, Now, again, they've got a great CEO. They've got a great management team there. And I think people don't understand how much of an effect
Yeah.
the management can have. I mean, we were talking about Tesla. Um, Whether you like him or you don't like him, Musk does a really good job,
Yeah.
but he's got to concentrate on it. And right now, he's not concentrating on what's important. He's spending too much time with Twitter. And I'm sorry, I'm a Twitter fan. I use it every day, and I know he spent $44 billion on it, but you know he needs to get out of there and get his head back in the game for Tesla and his other ventures,
Yeah.
or they're the ones that are going to be going the way of the BlackBerry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. Understandable. Yeah. Definitely. Okay. One more sector, and I'm going to kind of combine two because they can kind of be related. Transportation and just industrials, heavy industrials, companies like Caterpillar and so forth. In Canada for transportation, the rails are huge. We have Canadian National and Canadian Pacific Railways. Um, Yeah, I guess just sort of what are your thoughts on transportation and industrials?
I like the rails. I don't own any of them. You know, we've had, I think in the next year, 2 years, 5 years, you're going to see a big change because we've had the supply chain disruption and everything else. And so I think you're going to see a lot of emphasis put on that transportation that's getting the goods and services from point A to point B much more efficiently. And so I think you're going to see things put in there. It's not really related, but it's similar in my opinion. You've seen the disruption that Southwest Airlines had, you know, this last week, and I think that's some of the same disruption we've had in the supply chain. You know, they've got to modernize their systems, and I think the service side of those is where you're going to see a lot of growth. Um,
Yeah.
and I think it's going to be very interesting in the next, you know, few years on those railroads and the transportation. As far as the heavy industrials, Caterpillar is a company that I've owned, and I don't own a big position in it, but I love the company. I always have. It's sort of a plotter. It always plods along. In a recession, it'll go down, gives you a good opportunity to buy. One of my favorite long term plays, and I actually consider it a technology play, is John Deere,
Yeah.
ticker symbol DE. Great company. It's the market leader in farm equipment, and the amount of technology that is coming into farming and ranching is just phenomenal.
If you were to
And
sit in a tractor, a brand new 2023 tractor, you you would think you're sitting in a spaceship because
oh,
that's the technology that it has compared to, even a tractor from 20 years ago that was just basically started up and it's got, gears and go and right. But yeah, today's tractors are amazing, and I agree with you. They are pieces of very impressive pieces of technology.
but the tech that's coming in there, and you're going to see it, you know, fairly soon. You're going to have self-driving tractors where the farmer's going to be sitting where you are in front of a computer, and you're going to say, okay, we're going to plant this seed in this one, go, and the tractor's going to go out there and do the work, and it doesn't matter if it's light or dark or anything else. um, they're going to do it with AI and plant the most efficient way they can. I mean, it literally is phenomenal. So I am a huge fan of John Deere. Again, I'm an owner of it. um, I will add to it on pullbacks, and can't say enough about it on the positive side. Um, just an amazing company.
Yeah, you could probably, make the argument for Caterpillar too with that updated technology. You get into a brand new excavator and it's just amazing technology that's at your fingertips. And
It's
yeah,
really the
so
same. It's the same type as technology, just different sectors. One serves mining and construction, one serves farming, but they're both
yeah,
big, heavy pieces of equipment that are made for ripping up grounds and doing other things.
yeah, and that's I guess kind of bringing it back to transportation as well, like farming, you've got to get those crops in the ground, grow your crops, but you've got to get um, from farm to fork, as they say, right? So, supply chain is very important. I actually work in supply chain management, so I understand the challenges of the last 2, 3 years has been very trying, as you can imagine.
Yeah, I'm sure it is for you. It's got to be really bad there for you.
Yeah, so yeah, I do purchasing and logistics for a food company, so I'm very familiar with the whole idea of, you know, how good is the crop this year, of whether it's, say green lentils or tomatoes or potatoes or whatever the crop is, right? It's like, you know, these farmers, not just the farmers, like we're all depending on it to be a good crop. We need it to be a good crop, but then we need to get it from the farm onto a rail car to transport it from one side of the country to the other or onto a truck, right? And again, the rail only goes so far in each direction. You've got to, get it from the farm onto a truck, into the rail yard, and then at the other end, it's got to go back on a truck to get to, whatever, say manufacturer, like food processing plant, or directly to a grocery store, or wherever it's going, right? So,
And then if you add it going overseas, you got to put it on a ship or a plane.
yeah,
Yeah, it's I actually, when I was in school, I actually thought about going into, logistics, and that it was a field that was just getting started. And I chose to stick with my marketing, which is my background, instead. In some respects, I wish I'd gone that direction.
Yeah, logistics can be very interesting. Well, it is very interesting on a daily basis because, and you're also dealing with weather too. All of a sudden it's like, "Oh, I had
Yeah.
this truck moving, but there's a snowstorm and now this truck isn't moving," or whatever, right? So, tons of challenges for sure, for sure.
Yeah. And balances and challenges. I've got to get this there. I can't go through this way. How do I go around?
Yeah,
Where I live in Northern California, we're up close to the Sierra Nevada mountains, and there's one pass, Interstate 80, Donner Summit, and it closes several times during the winter. And when it does, it creates a log jam,
for sure, yeah.
and there's no way to get around it for hundreds of miles in either direction. So,
Which again causes, problems to the supply chain.
yeah,
Those poor truck drivers are sitting there and going, do I go 100 miles south out of my way or 100 miles north out of my way just to try to make it around this? Or do I just sit and wait till the pass opens again?
yep. It's it's an interesting dynamic, and one that's not going to change anytime soon. There, so we're always going to need people like you, or maybe you'll be replaced with AI one of these days, and you can
Yeah,
be
I'm
sitting
hoping
where I
so. I'm
am.
hoping very soon, and then I can just sit here talking to people on the Passive Income podcast about dividends all day, every day.
Well, there are people on Twitter that make $250,000 worth of YouTube videos and
Yeah,
everything else, so that's very doable. Um, well,
yeah. So
not for
with
me.
that said, subscribe.
Yeah, yeah. Subscribe, pay my salary, please. I want to retire.
Oh, Barry, this has been absolutely amazing. It's been a great conversation. Thank you so much for your patience off the start where we had some technical issues. And yeah, it's been very enjoyable talking to you. And yeah, definitely you can find Barry on Twitter at Barry Milligan 8. As he said, he's very active on Twitter and uh, shares a lot of really informative tweets. But as we said off the top, also some very fun tweets and dog pick tweets. So definitely give Barry a follow. In closing, Barry, anything else you'd like to say?
I just want to reiterate what you said. Doesn't matter what your investing style is, where you get your idea, do your own due diligence, put together your investing plan, start as early as you can, and just keep plugging along. And you too will be sitting where I'm at one of these days. I retired 7 years ago. Um, and retirement's, if you've got the money, it's everything you want it to be. But you've
Yeah,
got to put
nice.
in the work. But if you don't, nobody else is going to.
Great words, great advice. Yeah. So again, thank you so much for being on today's episode of the Passive Income Podcast. If you're still watching or listening, you definitely do have to subscribe. Those are the rules. I mean, you're still here nearly an hour later, so just go ahead and click that subscribe button. And Barry, thank you again.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
Subscribe.
There we go. Thank you, sir.